Now that was my really, really, really creative way of transitioning into the Novus Ordo and Vatican II.
Yes.
So I guess before we actually start getting into the Novus Ordo, we should probably provide a little bit, just a little tiny bit of background for Vatican II.
Right. Yeah, because I didn't know a ton about Vatican II, even up until recently. So
it's funny you even say that, because I was thinking about it yesterday, and I was like, I actually don't really know anything about the actual history of Vatican II. I didn't even know like the exact dates that it happened between.
Yeah.
So I did a little research last night.
Nice.
But it is funny how, like, and I think that's the case with a lot of people, actually, or most people, when they talk about Vatican II, don't actually know all that much about its history, like the actual history of how the council played out and when things happened. So to get to some brief background, Vatican II, or the Second Vatican Council, was an ecumenical council called by the Pope, who at the time was John the 23rd.
Yeah, that sounds right. I think he was the one that called it, but then, sorry.
Yeah, Paul VI ended it.
Right.
So he called it in 1962. It ended in 1965 under Paul VI. And we're not going to get into Vatican II, at least in this episode, although it would be really interesting to get into the history of Vatican II.
Probably it'd be worthwhile as well, just as on a personal level of becoming more familiar with the history.
Exactly. Even the little research I did last night was eye-opening in a lot of ways. But to generalize a lot, one of the intended goals of Vatican II, admitted by many of kind of leading bishops, cardinals, churchmen who were involved, and the parity, which is Latin, I think. I'm not actually sure where that term comes from, but basically it's a fancy term for a consultative expert, or like a theological expert. So these were like the theologians and philosophers who were not like bishops or cardinals, but were
sorry. Go continue. I just want to add one thing after your.
Oh yeah. No, I was just defining parity.
Sorry.
So these parity were like theological experts, advising the bishops on the decisions they were making. But all these people kind of admitted that this council was intended to modernize the church in many different ways. Because by this point in time, by the 1960s, there was a sense, definitely in the wider world, so non-Catholics looking at the Catholic Church, but even a significant number of Catholics themselves, specifically liberal Catholics within the church, believe the church was, shall we say, outdated, a little old and stuffy, and needed to be brought up to the modern times. Actually, one of the terms that they used was aggiornamento, which is a kind. I don't know like literally what it translates to. It's Italian, but the sense is bringing up to date.
Well, the interesting thing I was just going to say is it's important to note that Vatican II is a pastoral council, not a dogmatic council. And pastoral council is one that deals with how to implement the faith, and that would go to what you're saying about modernizing, essentially, like how updating how we implement the faith in the modern world.
Right. Which is that's a really good point to make, because lots of people, when it comes to talking about Vatican II, because it's a council, they're like, well, it's an ecumenical council, and therefore everything you have to absolutely believe in a sense to everything that was written and said at the council. And it's like, no. Yeah, for exactly that point.
Anything in conflict, I believe, anything in conflict, like anything in the council that's in conflict with like previous councils, especially previous, like I guess you'd say dogmatic councils, you can, as a Catholic, you can like resist. You don't have to, follow everything that they said, like you were saying.
Right. Yeah. I was just going to make an interesting historical point is that most ecumenical councils are dogmatic. So it's interesting that this was intended as a pastoral council, which is interesting. That I think it was even Pope Paul VI who said at least once, I believe it was more than once, that it was a pastoral council and that they weren't defining anything new. They were just, if there were any definitions in the council documents, it was only definition or upholding definitions that had been made previously.
Yeah. That'd be interesting to know why exactly. I mean, I guess implementing the faith. So, and like you were saying, updating. This goes, to the modernizing, as we're the modernizing of the church. I guess you wouldn't necessarily need to have a dogmatic council. I guess I'm just trying to get why was it if it's an ecumenical council, why was it a pastoral when in the past most have been dogmatic? I don't know. I guess I don't know the history of all the previous councils.
Well, so think like Council of Nicaea, right? Council of Nicaea, one of the first dogmatic councils, dogmatic ecumenical councils, and Council of Nicaea was called in response to Arius and Arian heresy.
Oh, yeah. This wasn't called really in response to anything.
Yeah, I mean,
like anything, any heresy at least.
The interesting thing, though, this is a bit of a tangent, but the interesting thing is they did a poll of the world's bishops before they actually called Vatican II. And one of the poll questions was, what do you want to be discussed at Vatican II, at this future council? And I want to say a majority of the world's bishops responded with communism, specifically a condemnation of communism.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Yeah, 1962, Cold War still going on, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's
like a hot topic.
When was
That makes sense.
When was the Cuban Missile Crisis? 68? 69?
I don't know the exact date.
I'm showing my lack of modern history knowledge. I know it was during that time period. So the Cold War is definitely still going on, and communism is very much alive. So I mean, this isn't even, when did Vietnam start? The Vietnam War. 71?
Yeah, I don't know that either.
Anyways, to cut a long story short, they didn't actually end up condemning communism in the Second Vatican Council for reasons that we could talk about in a later that should be another podcast, talking about Vatican Council and all the shenanigans that happened at it.
Yeah, that would be definitely interesting.
there were a lot of shenanigans. But yeah, going back to the topic at hand, yeah, it being a pastoral council, interesting, especially with like the number of things that they changed, because it wasn't just the mass. It's the mass that we'll be talking about, but it was the mass. It was the church's relationship to other religions. So if you've ever heard of the term ecumenism.
Yeah, I'm not super familiar with it, but I have heard that word.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not super familiar with the ecumenical movement either, other than like ecumenism refers to the idea of like dialoguing with other religions and trying to find common ground.
Yes, yeah. I can already think of something else. Yeah, the Freemasons.
Oh, yeah. Maybe finding a little too much common ground with other religions.
Yeah, exactly.
But so things like that, it was an entire shift in the way the church had interacted with other religions. Trying to think what else. Church hierarchy and governance, massive changes to that. Introducing the concept of collegiality among bishops. And also, if you've ever heard the term synodality, or like a synod.
No.
I don't know too much about this either, but just the idea of that decisions in the church should be made by like groups of bishops coming together and debating and like.
So like the in Germany, what is it called? This synodal way or something like that?
Yeah.
Is that that's what you're talking about? When you say synodality?
Oh yeah, no, that's exactly. Well, a little. Do you know what's happening in Germany right now?
Not too specific. I guess I know that there's the arch. I can't remember what his name is. Oh, basically, one of the bishops wants to make homosexuality basically make that make it okay in the Catholic Church. I think that I'm not. That's one thing. That's like
blessings for same-sex union.
What?
Blessings for same-sex union.
Yeah. I don't know if that's like. There's probably more to it, but yeah, that's like the one thing I know.
Oh yeah, no, that's one of the bigger ones. Also trying to basically, okay, the German church, they're heretics. There's no way around it. Most of the bishops in Germany are heretics. So yeah,
because
they're
those beliefs.
Oh yeah, well, it's not just trying to bless same-sex unions as a sort of like pseudo marriage. They're pushing for an entire rethinking of the church's sexual morality. So like masturbation, okay. Homosexuality, obviously, just a different form of love.
Oh yeah, I think.
What else? Probably stuff to do with divorce and remarriage. I mean, just anything that involves sex, like a total rethinking of the church's sexual morality.
Okay.
And the thing is, like, the side that's pushing for this is in the majority in Germany. And in this synodal way, which is this basically national council involving bishops and lay people, so like theologians and other non-clerics, they're like debating and voting on these questions. So like putting it up for vote, should we change the rule about blessing same-sex unions, as if it's a democracy.
Right. Wait, so you said that the lay are also involved in this is in the synod or the synodal way specifically, right? Is that
yes?
Does that have historical precedent? Do you know?
Oh, a good question. Huh. So like the way they're involved, as far as I understand it, is that I guess I don't know if there's only 2 rounds of voting, but there's 2 main rounds of voting. So there's like the I can't say this word, consultative round of voting. So where something's like, let's say, blessings for same-sex unions is brought to the table, and then everybody in attendance at the synod votes on it. Are you in favor? Yes or no? And then the organizers, whoever's in charge, sees like what the vote's like, and then they take that into account in the deliberations at the next level, which only involve the bishops. And then when the bishops vote on it, then that's binding in law.
Yeah.
So basically, like the first,
it's like getting a census or taking a survey or something almost.
Yeah, or it's like seeing what popular opinion is almost.
Yeah.
And
then that's obviously that's taken into consideration by the bishops.
Oh yeah.
Which there's clear obvious problems with that.
Mm-hmm. But historical precedent, yes, actually. I mean, well, yes and no. So I'm thinking like Constantine. Fun fact, did you know Constantine was actually the one who called for the Council of Nicaea?
I think I might have known that, but
yeah. So he convened it. So, and obviously he was a layman. I don't even think he was baptized by that point, which is kind of funny.
It is
because he was kind of a. Okay, this is a tangent of a tangent, but Constantine, like his approach to baptism was, I'm only going to get baptized when I absolutely need it, and it's kind of it was part and parcel of like the practice of confession at the time. Because in the early church, you could only confess your sins, like in the sacrament of confession, once in your whole life.
Why?
That was the praxis of the sacrament.
Huh. So I'm assuming everybody then would wait till they're on their deathbed.
Oh yeah. Well, actually, a lot of people would wait until they were on their deathbed to get baptized. Because when you're baptized, you're also forgiven all your sins. Yeah. So basically, like you have 2 shots.
That's just
just like you get baptized, you're on your deathbed, and then you don't die, and you have I have one last chance.
Yeah, one more round in the pistol. That's weird. That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So talk about, at least in my opinion, like a good pastoral change was like how confession is actually like practiced now. I am a big fan of frequent confession.
Yeah.
Anyways, that was a tangent off of a tangent.
Right.
Oh, lay involvement of councils. Not unheard of, but also I can't think off the top of my head any example of a layman really exercising any like level of like authority in a council in terms of making a decision on a theological matter.
Yeah.
Like Constantine convened the council, but he didn't like, I don't know, he wasn't the one who had the final vote on whether or not Arius was a heretic or something.
Yeah. Well, I'm a little fuzzy on that history, but at that point in time, did the bishops have that like a power or that authority to call a council? Like, was there political reasons maybe why they wouldn't have?
Oh,
you know what I'm saying? Like, was it Constantine sort of like taking action for the bishops and then, letting them do the bishop stuff in the council that he can't do?
Yeah, I mean, well, that whole period's really interesting because I mean, Constantine is the first Christian emperor, and he wasn't so he legalized Christianity. He didn't make it the state religion, but he supported it with public funds. So like he used taxpayer money to build churches. I think he started suppressing pagan religious practices. Um, I want to say he started codifying laws that were Christian laws. So that's all to say that under Constantine, Christianity started to become like part of the cultural fabric of the empire. And when that started to happen, problems in the church also started to become problems in society. So when you have Arius, who's a heretic, and he starts leading a heretical movement, and you start having adherents of this heretical movement,
it's affecting a society as well as the church.
Exactly. Right.
Okay, that makes.
Yeah. But not just like at the cultural level, like it became a political problem too. Because if your political rulers are allied to the church hierarchy, but then you have a group splitting away from the church hierarchy and not, professing obedience to them, well, it's the next logical step for them to also be disobedient towards the political authorities, right? Because you're an Arian living under an Orthodox Catholic pope or emperor. Well, he's a different,
Yeah.
At this point, you two are separated, and since religion and politics is very intertwined at this point, the Arians were not only seen as like religious, like a problem within the church, but like a political problem, a potential source of what's the word? Instability, rebellion, which actually did end up happening with a lot of other heretical groups. I mean, even think like how were the Christians treated under the Roman Empire, like pre-Constantine, like with persecutions and right. Christians were kind of seen as undermining public order, the stability of the empire, being disobedient, disloyal subjects. You're an obedient subject if you offer incense to the emperor and the gods. Well, if Christians don't do that, then you're disobedient. So it's a similar concept. That was a really long way of saying that, yes, there were also political and cultural reasons that Constantine wanted to call the Council of Nicaea.
Oh yeah. It wasn't because the bishops or whatever were impotent or something, and because of like the relation of church and state, I guess.
Right. And also like
Constantine had a political motivation as well.
Right. And also like we have to keep in mind too, like the Pope at this time, planes didn't exist, the internet didn't exist, phones didn't exist.
Yeah.
Motorized boats didn't exist. Cars didn't exist. Basically horses existed, and letters brought by messengers on foot. So like that's all to say that the Pope in Rome, how much
doesn't have it.
Like actual authority did he have over Bishop Bob in England?
Yeah.
Maybe the bishop in England knew the Pope's name. Maybe.
Yeah, that's something you don't really think about. You just take, because we take, modern communication for granted. But yeah.
Yeah, talk about advanced technology.
Yeah.
yeah, going back from a massive tangent.
So we were talking about, I guess we were talking about councils, pastoral council.
It's supposed to be a brief background of Vatican II.
Yes.
The not so brief background of Vatican II. But so more specifically, with regards to like the liturgy and Vatican II, part of what the reformers of Vatican II were calling for was a reform of the liturgy. And this was called for officially by Paul VI in a document called Sacrosanctum Concilium. What's interesting, and I didn't know this, but what's interesting is that the Novus Ordo wasn't actually created during the council. It was created after the council. So after the council ended in 65, Paul VI organized a committee of bishops who met for 4 years and basically hatched out a new liturgy, and it was implemented in 1969 in another document. So it wasn't. So it's more proper to say that the Novus Ordo was born right after Vatican II. It wasn't created during Vatican II, but definitely like the ideas and the what people were hoping to do was present during the Second Vatican Council. It just didn't actually like manifest until afterwards.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the goal with the Novus Ordo was to modernize the liturgy in order to make it, fundamentally, to make it more appealing to modern man. And then the big question is, Jude, was it successful? Does the Novus Ordo appeal to modern man?
Yeah. About that.
Does it appeal to you? You just get
it doesn't seem to appeal. What?
You just get fired up to go to a clown mask.
Yes. No. Yeah, it obviously doesn't. You know, we're getting right down to it. I mean, if you just look at the numbers.
And what are the numbers?
What?
What are the numbers?
Well, I guess it kind of depends on what we're talking about. Well, like, only 1/3 of people believing in the true presence of Christ. In the sacrament, in the Eucharist. That's kind of problematic.
And the even worse part about that statistic is that it's 1/3 of weekly regular mass attendees.
Churchgoers.
Yeah, which is already a ridiculously small percentage of Catholics. I think it's like in the United States. I don't want to make up a statistic, but it's in the low 20s, maybe 20% of Catholics attend weekly mass, and so it's taking that 20%, a third of that,
and then dividing that into third, and yeah,
which that I mean, that's just bad. Like it's like a fundamental tenet of the faith, and
right. So I guess I guess the question to play devil's advocate would be, can you lay that at the feet of the Novus Ordo completely? Are there, outside causes to that? I'm trying to think of I guess you'd say modern, the modernization. What am I trying to say? I think people would point to the sexual revolution, and I don't know if that would be connected to people not believing in the Eucharist, but could there be some outside causes? I don't know.
I mean, I think for sure.
Yeah,
I think it would be entirely incorrect to lay the blame entirely at the feet of the Novus Ordo Mass or liturgy, because obviously, like, there's a lot of other stuff going on.
Right. I guess kind of meant like the culture outside of the liturgy, around it, the culture people are living in.
It's almost like it's not quite a chicken and egg problem, but it is a feedback loop, right? Like, so you have a general culture, so I guess we could call it modern Western culture, right?
Right.
And then you have the church existing within modern Western culture. And I think we can all agree that modern Western culture, even by the 1970s, was kind of falling apart. Like sexual revolution. I'm trying to think of other. Like, there's all sorts of changes in attitudes towards divorce, abortion, government. So we see an increase in the size of government, in the power of government.
I guess this would go towards like modernization or modernity,
right?
Kind of like we were talked about at the beginning of the episode.
Exactly. Right. So you have this big overarching culture that we all live in, or I guess they were living in, and then you have the church, and you'd hope that, like, okay, we live in a culture that's difficult to live in the sense of it's difficult to maintain your faith in this sort of culture, because you have all these other options, all these other belief systems, all these other ideas that you can start holding. So then the hope would be that, well, okay, we have all these problems outside of the church, but hopefully in the church you're getting enough nourishment that it will be enough to strengthen your belief such that you can live in the world and still maintain your faith.
Yeah. I guess another thing to think about is, like, this isn't the first time it's been quote unquote hard to believe the teachings of the Catholic Church.
It's always
there's
easy.
There's such thing as history and persecution.
Mm-hmm.
I guess
really,
like going back to what you were saying about
another group persecuting the church, though.
What?
Usually it involves another group persecuting the church, though.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Not shooting yourself in the foot.
Well, it's almost like the opposite, I guess. Because, as you said, the goal was to modernize the liturgy in order to make it appealing to modern man. So that's kind of the opposite of being persecuted. It's almost like you're trying to appeal to the other group.
Mm-hmm.
You're
basically, a really bad analogy is, it's a bunch of 12-year-olds in the playground, and you got the group of popular kids, and then the church is like the loser loner in the corner, and in order to get in with the group of popular kids, he starts dressing and acting like the popular kids. Except the popular
hoping that more people, yeah.
But then the popular kids still don't respect or like him.
I mean, if anything, you'd think less.
Yeah.
That person.
Well, because it's inauthentic.
Yeah, exactly. It's a charade.
Now, so that is a pretty big question. Like, does the Novus Ordo appeal to modern man? And I guess, like, I guess based on what we've just said, like, in a sense, it does. Right? Like,
by that you mean like sort
like
of the
appeal,
philosophy.
Right. Like not, when I said that, I didn't mean in terms of like, is it attractive? I meant more like, was it designed such that it attempted to appeal? And like, they did everything they could in order to be appealing to modern man.
Well, yeah, because it has a lot of characteristics of, you know, kind of what we said, like modernity and the ideals of the Enlightenment, I guess.
Right.
So in that sense, it would appeal, quote unquote.
Right. But then I guess the deeper question is, and the one that was alluded to earlier, is it okay, well, it has elements, or many elements of it are designed specifically in order to appeal to modern man, but does it actually? And
it seems to be, yeah.
And I think so now, like, getting into the really fun stuff now, the nitty gritty. But before getting into like specifics about the liturgy itself, I don't know who said this. I should probably find it. It's a well, what would you call it? Like a, not a common phrase, but a
maxim.
Aphorism. Yeah, maxim maybe. Yeah. Within the church. If you've ever heard, have you ever heard lex orandi?
No.
So it goes lex orandi, lex credendi, lex vivendi. So that's all Latin, and it literally translates to the law of praying is the law of belief, is the law of living. So basically, the way that you pray is going to inform the way what you believe, which is then going to inform how you live. So like the concept behind that is, okay, like what and how you pray, that's going to determine what you believe. So if you're constantly praying like to, I don't know, Allah, the one God,
yeah. You'd only do that if you believe in that God.
Right. And I guess more to the point, like, so as Catholics, we cross ourselves in the name of the Father and Son and the Holy Spirit. But a Protestant, I mean, there's certain Protestant churches that don't believe in the Trinity. So, obviously, they wouldn't do something like signing themselves. They wouldn't pray in the name of the Trinity because that's not something they believe in, and vice versa. By not praying in the name of the Trinity, that's going to inform what they believe and what their kids believe. So I guess like as with that kind of constituting some, I guess not guidelines to like how the liturgy should look, but it's definitely guiding principles for a liturgy. If it's defined like the Mass as the public prayer of the church.